gloved and held by Ottinger. And there's going to be a penalty out front. And now Kaprizov and Robertson.
Lots to get into. The decision on Marc Andre Fleury, all the game misconducts, you name it. Kaprizov, we got lots to go through, and we're going to get all into it right now. Let's go. Hey, you know what? On a positive note, we weren't up until 1 a.m. last night, unless you were just still sulking on that loss. I mean, that was brutal. I think a lot of people probably went to bed early. Obviously, the Wild fell 7-3, almost came back, but did not happen. And allowing 7 goals, that is where we got to start. Everybody's talking about it. We're getting comments on Twitter, on our last YouTube video, things like that, all about Gus the Bus or Marc Andre Fleury. Did the Wild make the correct decision?
I mean, we talked about it last episode. Like we said, your goal on the road, you want that 1-1 split, and it felt like the Wild as a whole just got complacent in that game and just felt, I don't know, they didn't have that same burst of speed that I saw at game 1. That I feel like it's disappointing, but you know, we still are in a fine spot moving forward. But yeah, that was not a pretty one.
You do get the consolation prize of the split. You know, in hindsight, which is always 2020, Gus the Bus was likely the guy to start last night, although you can't definitively say that for sure. I'm gonna take some positive right out of the top here instead of getting on the second guessing parade, and that is, at least I think for now, the coaching staff and the hockey ops know who not to play. And obviously, Gus the Bus will unequivocally be the starter in Game 3 at Xcel Energy Center on Friday. And you know what? You kind of check a box. We wouldn't be talking about anything had that been a 7-3 Wild victory last night and a 2-game advantage. But I think sometimes you got to do something, even if it's wrong, just to find out, you know, what you need to avoid moving forward. And clearly, after last night, and I didn't expect Minnesota to maybe win last night, but I didn't expect them to get thumped. And when you get thumped like that, 7 goals, especially first time, I think they gave up 7 to the Rangers in the first week of the season, and I believe that was Fleury. No good. So here we are.
Here we are. I mean, there was a lot of positive things. I feel like we should try to start there. There's a lot of things that, you know, I want to be negative. I listen to a lot of the Wild podcasts and other Minnesota sports channels, and you know what? Most of them are going to be negative today. I think there's still a lot of good things that come out of this. Like Alex said, hey, going home 1-1 is not bad. You could easily be down 0-2. Our record in Dallas is not good in the franchise overall, so to split feels pretty good. But the way that it happened just didn't feel good, because when you let up 7 goals, obviously even Fleury said it was embarrassing. But what's some of the positives that you guys think really stood out? And I'll start with just one. Putting Matt Boldy at center, even if he didn't play perfectly, I love the ambition and the thought and the process behind putting Matt Boldy at center. Let's start with that. What do you think, Gus, of Boldy centering yesterday in playoffs?
Technically, you never really want to have a guy play center for the first time in the National Hockey League on Game 2 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. But I mean, they were out of options. I mean, Minnesota was out of options, clearly. You know, even Hartman can play center, you know, and Jules Eriksson X on the shelf. Eventually, you run out of people to take draws. And I don't know even so much that I was, you know, knocked out my socks with Matt's center ability last night, but I don't think he was egregious, and I don't think it was the reason they lost the game or lost as many draws as they do. They got to get healthy. And interestingly enough, Zuccarello and Boldy, who we talked about on our last Hot Dish Sports Wild podcast, continue to be a little bit on the woodwork side. Kirill Kaprizov, a little bit on the woodwork side. I saw a lot of the national media writing on that overnight here heading into today. But I don't know if that's a positive, but I think the positives for me that are going to come out of here is the Wild, first and foremost, are going to figure out that whatever that recipe was in Game 1, where they came out and, you know, really went toe-to-toe with Dallas, they need to be playing that kind of hockey. And by that kind of hockey, I mean, you know, get on the forecheck, you know, play well defensively and be on your toes. I don't think they were ever on their toes last night, and they got what was coming to them because Dallas, you forget. I mean, fans get really greedy, right? You win game 1 of a best of 7, and you're going like, well, let's go for 2. But the consolation prize is that Dallas has to win a game in St. Paul to win the series, and so far Minnesota has held court. So that's a positive. As far as Boldy playing center, you take a look at Joel Eriksson Ek, which I have to believe will be making a reappearance this weekend in St. Paul. We'll see where Hartman is at. I actually think they missed a guy like Jonathan Klingberg last night back on defense. He's a big body. He's got an axe to grind with Dallas, his former team that traded him or let him go, whatever that case was. Those are the positives I think you move forward. Even in our business, guys, in media, even in media production, sometimes you bulk erase what you shot all day on camera, and you come back in that game 3. You're at home now. Your home record's good, and you take care of business. You protect that. The one thing that they have to protect right now, and I'm rambling, is that first win in Dallas and bulk erasing from there. And again, we've checked the box now on a goaltending situation. They're going to ride Gus the Bus until he loses, probably. And maybe not even then some. And so these are the positives I'm drawing off in a very long and elongated answer.
Yeah, for sure. Alex, positives?
My one of my biggest positives was just seeing how ready Foligno was to go with Suter. I love that. Yeah. And Suter just turtling up, hiding away from the conflict. Like, it's frustrating to see because I want to see him, I want to see a scrap, but I loved how aggressive Foligno was on him all night and just really setting that tone. And I think that's probably my biggest positive.
Yeah, that was big. I think we stayed tough. I think that was kind of to bank off of both of what you're saying. I think we out-hit them like 40-something to 20-something. Like, we had twice as many hits as they did, so we laid the body on them. I know there was a few shifts that I watched, just kept my eyes on Reeves, and he went out there, and I think he had 3-4 hits in multiple shifts. Like, in a single shift to have 3-4 hits, I mean, some guys are hoping to have that in a whole game, so that was impressive. He was putting the body on people. I think we wore them down while we kind of got a game to rest some of our players in a way, too, because, we needed Eck to not have to come out there. We needed Hartman to be able to heal up. All these guys kind of got a rest day. I think if we had lost that first game, we would have had our backs against the wall more. We maybe had to put some guys out there who are injured and say, we got to at least find a way to win this one. And luckily we won that first game, so we didn't have to put all of our top assets out there. We were able to throw Fleury out there, kind of take a gamble. And you know what? He's still a good goaltender, so I like the way they went. I think it was still the right decision to make. Whether they should have left him out there that long, I don't know, because a couple of those first goals were on him, in my opinion, and that might have been a situation where I decided to swap him out. But you also don't want to lose the confidence that Fleury's got. He's been there, done that. There's no reason to mistrust him and throw Gustafsson out there. Now he lets in a couple goals and you lose anyway. That's no good for anybody. So positive was that they stuck behind their guns. They did not take Fleury out. They let guys stay on the ice longer that didn't necessarily always stay on the ice longer. I think it was almost we beat them down and they didn't beat us down. I think we're coming back to St. Paul, not necessarily fully healthy, but a little bit more rested than the Stars are, which is a good sign.
And about the Fleury, whether you keep him in there or not, and right or wrong, a veteran goaltender like Marc Andre with a Stanley Cup or 2 under his belt and headed to the Hall of Fame, there's a respect factor to pull a goalie, and there's also a time where to go like, what, it's not going very well. This game's not going very well. You're gonna play and you're going to finish the bed that you laid down in, so to speak, with Marc Andre. You also run the risk of a game that's out of hand like that, putting Gus the Bus in with maybe 3 goals scored of him, not going very well. You've got him protected now, coming home. He's on a roll. His last sample size is a win in Dallas. Then he's the Game 3 starter in St. Paul. Other positives I saw last night as I listened to you, Obi, were the Swedes. Oscar Sundqvist scored a goal. Marcus Johansson was good again. I thought Jonas Brodin was off the charts last night. Those are 3 Swedes, and how Swede would it be, pardon the pun, if Joel Eriksson Ek joined that fracas on Friday here in St. Paul, right?
Gustav Nyquist counting that too? Did you mean?
I did, yeah.
Okay,
Johansson.
Gus the
No,
Bus,
no, you're right.
Yeah.
I take that back. Nyquist, Sundqvist, Brodin. Who am I forgetting?
I think
Johansson.
Nyquist was the biggest
catch.
standout to me last night. For
Good
sure.
catch. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that's right on the head for sure. It's good to see all those guys back out there and playing and get them in a playoff situation. Even if it is a loss, they're going to come out hot in St. Paul. That's for sure.
And you think about how big Joel Eriksson Ek, now he might not be 100%, but who is in the playoffs. But if you add his ability in the faceoff circle, if you add his big body in front, mixing it up with bigger defensemen from Dallas, Suter included, and all that rough stuff, you actually think Joel Eriksson Ek's going to take a cross check across the back from Suter and not turn around and get what's coming to him. So these are the things is on an overcast Friday, on an overcast Thursday here, looking to a game 3 that you're going like, all right, but there is that, and there is that. And speaking of Swedes back in the lineup, if Klingberg can get back for a game 3 or a game 4 or both, I think it's a much different scenery at home, and it's obviously a much different lineup with all those people, back in the lineup healthy. And there's going to come a time for Bill Guerin and Dean Evison. Obviously, doctors and players have the final say, but sounds like Eriksson Ek is chomping at the bit to get back from everything I'm told. There comes a time where you're not going to be able to say, well, let's just wait another couple games or two if things continue to trend like they are with the Dallas and Minnesota series right now.
Yeah, and we all know that the playoffs are a long haul, so you can't, as much as you want to play game to game, you got to take it for the long haul, and you don't want to rush him out there and have him get hurt, and now you lose 2 games because he wasn't capable, and you're not even going to round 2. So they're making the right calls. I'm sure they've got a lot smarter people than we have over here making the calls. So that's good to see. But let's kind of pivot to, we've mentioned Suter, we've mentioned the cross-checking, things like that. Let's just talk about the penalties. Let's start with the first one that kicked off the game. The 4-minute penalty, the high stick. I don't know. Felt a little, even if it was our guy getting hit in the face with that stick, I was like, really? A 4-minute penalty? And at that point, I had the ESPN broadcast on, actually, on ESPN2, and they were like, yep, that's 4 minutes, all right. And they just didn't even mention it. They didn't even question the call. They didn't question the refs, but yet every other play that's on the opposite end, they question the refs. They're like, oh, the Dallas got a penalty for that? Weird, wild. But then all of a sudden it happens to us, and they're just like, yeah, 4-minute minor, 2-minute, double 2, whatever. All right, move on. And I was just so frustrated, I switched over to Bally. I was like, I am done with this ESPN national broadcast. I felt like they are not good. They don't know hockey. They don't know the players. Like, I don't know. Anyways, that's my rant about the national broadcast. Let's talk about
let's talk about that just for a second. I think I can add some clarity in that the bridge of the nose is bleeding, and if you draw blood, it's the extra 2 for sure. And albeit the bead of blood on the nose, I believe it was Domi, was the size of a Q-tip head. Yep. It was red, and therefore the 2-minute deal. Let's get back to some of the no calls. There were calls. Actually, let's get back to some more calls. There were calls later in the game where the Wild got called for cross-checking in the rib area, and it was immediately called. And if that's immediately called, where was that call on Kirill Kaprizov and Suter and in game 1 and a couple other egregious cross-checking? I don't know if for sure you guys saw. Obviously, he's not really contributing point-wise, but Kirill Kaprizov has had enough. I mean, he was going after anybody and everybody who cheap-shotted him last night. I don't know if that's the greatest thing if you already have like a hamstring tear, or if that's your superstar player, but clearly I want to see some people come to his rescue, and I think Foligno started that last night. Do you think Kaprizov takes any crap? I can't believe he's just like fearless. Like he was up against guys a foot taller than him last night in some of those
Suter's afraid
instances.
To stand up for himself, and Kaprizov, we're like, stop standing up for yourself.
That's what I'm saying. Much more concise way.
Yeah. Please stop, Kaprizov. You're going to get hurt. And we're like, Suter, stop being a baby. Step up.
Yeah. But speaking of Kaprizov, and we don't need to dwell on it, but again, Zuccarello, Boldy, Kaprizov to we spent 10 minutes talking about this. If those guys aren't producing points pretty quick here on a more regular basis or a more consistent basis, we talked about it. I mean, like, Sundqvist scores last night. That's not the guy that you think is probably going to score, but you don't want Sundqvist and Sammy Steels and other third or fourth line players, no disrespect, to be the basis of your offense. So they're going to have to right that ship. I think whether or not Ryan Hartman comes back 100%, I think the sheer privilege of him being in the lineup for all of his teammates are something that gets that thing going. And I think you're going to see pretty close to a full boat on Friday and Sunday at Xcel Energy Center, which should bode well for the Green Team from Minnesota.
Got to make that distinction for sure.
Yeah. There's two green teams here. The good guys.
The good guys.
Yeah.
But
I don't know. I don't know. I mean, is the sky falling? I don't know. It's 1-1. You know the goalie you need to play now for sure, without any question.
We know Boldy can center a line, which is a good thing to know. I thought he did a good job at playing center. He was all over the puck. He was chasing well. He didn't look tired out there. And obviously, center can wear guys down sometimes if you switch from playing wing, because you're used to setting up on the boards rather than breaking out across the middle of the ice. But he did good.
And
well.
you got three playoff proven bodies that are coming back within the next game or two, and you're going home. So these are the things that Wild fans can hang their hats on a little bit here and press forward. Interestingly enough, the Wild called up Sammy Walker from the Baby Wild right during the playoffs. Iowa Wild losing in overtime last night to Rockford without Sammy.
Yes.
But Sammy, I was surprised they didn't play Sammy Walker last night, to be real honest with you, because he kind of brings that speed and he brings that grit. And I think in the fact that if that top line isn't producing and Boldy's not really lighting it up right now, you go for, he's basically leading the Wild in goals right now, him and Marco Rossi. But I was surprised they didn't play Rossi, especially since they drew him out of an AHL playoff series. I don't know if Sammy stays up or if he's going to go join the Baby Wild for the weekend as they try to stay alive. But I was question mark on that one, especially when you got fourth and third line guys that aren't really scoring points, and your upper echelon lines are struggling to score goals. So interesting little side note there as a by the way.
Yeah, definitely interesting, especially with, I don't know, was he suited up even on the bench?
No,
he didn't suit up, right?
He was not. He was actually the one backup, and Bill Guerin has said he wasn't going to rob Iowa just to have a team in a playoff chase down there come up and sit. He was literally the lone extra forward, providing some game time decisions on, probably people like Freddie Goudreau, who's not playing 100% right now, and there are a couple other forwards that are dinged up. You got to have somebody in the wings if you deem it you can't play one person after a morning skate on a game two, and that's why Sammy was there. Fortunately, he didn't play, and unfortunately, it maybe hindered the Wild down in Iowa a little bit in their AHL series. But that's that. That's hockey.
Yes, for sure. And Alex, let me ask you a question. Obviously, there was, 6-7 game misconducts by the end of this game. We saw Foligno go. We saw Reeves go. Kaprizov go. Dewar went, I think, or Duhaime. One of those two went out.
Duhaime,
went out. Ben went out. They were just sending everyone off the ice that looked the wrong way at somebody. It didn't even take a fight. It wasn't taking much. Is this what you expected when you saw the score at 7-3? Did you expect just everybody's going to get kicked out of this game? Were you thinking, all right, now it's time to fight Suter? What were your thoughts once that game felt out of reach?
Yeah, I feel like that's where most fans' head starts to go. It's like, well, if we can't win this game, let's win something out of this game. Let's tire these guys out. Like, obviously, you don't want to wish for injury, but, give them a little extra fatigue and don't let them go into the next game 100%. And, obviously, you're not hoping for any injuries, but you're just trying to, get something positive out of that game. And,
I wasn't surprised at all.
Foligno threw a punch and just went after Suter. Would he have gotten more than just a 10-minute game misconduct? Could he have been thrown out of the next game if he tried to fight Suter in a situation where Suter didn't want to fight? What would happen in that?
I'm pretty sure if you instigate a fight under 10 minutes to go in the third period, it carries over to the next game, and that's exactly why that rule is designed. I wasn't surprised at all. I think the referees were saying, let's not let anything stupid or more stupid than what's already happened in this series happen, and get everybody out of here. What it ends up doing is it ends up putting everybody in a pressure cooker, for a game 3 now. And for sure, I think you're going to see some big time fireworks this weekend in St. Paul, as long as those fireworks don't cost your team an elongated, shorthanded situation, either for Minnesota or for Dallas. So, like it or love it or hate it, the league has taken a look at this and going like, how best to diffuse things and how best to prevent things. The instigating a fight under 10 minutes and whatever happens next game is all they can do, and I'm okay with that system, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And the other question that we got, besides the fact of like, can the Wild fight Suter? That was a question people were throwing our way. We got some other questions in the comments on our last video. I'm just pulling up here. Somebody was asking about, I'm not sure, maybe it wasn't in our video. It might have been in the last Twitter, but they were asking about our power play. Our power play they even called it a powerless play. We obviously let in a shorthanded goal, but we did end up scoring a goal on the power play yesterday, which was good to see. But what are kind of your thoughts on our power play? It feels like something, and our penalty kill, really. I mean, I felt like our penalty kill felt really tight to the inside and not really developing a lot of pressure on the outside. It felt like our guys were feet apart and yet giving them all kinds of space to make any passes they want to. And it seems like when they close off those gaps on teams, they play a lot better. It felt like when they played the Avalanche a few weeks ago, they really closed that off, where now against the Stars, it seems like their game plan is more, let's just lock down that center, that middle of the zone, and let them make those far cross passes. What kind of things do you guys see on the power play that they could work on, or the penalty kill, or is everything fine? Are we just overthinking it?
I mean,
I'll start on the power play. Maybe Alex can take the PK, but or whatever. But the power play to me is what I did notice when the Wild's power play is clicking on all cylinders. They've got good zone entry, and they're entering the zone with all kinds of speed or making a calculated dump in and gaining control of the puck. I didn't see that in Game 2 like I saw it in Game 1 and even into the regular season. And I think that's a couple of things. I think Kirill Kaprizov is still not at full speed, and I mean, Kirill Kaprizov could gain zones almost single-handedly when he's healthy and didn't have the hammy problems. And then it's a personnel deal. I mean, if Joel Eriksson Ek is not out there, and Boldy and Zuccarello are less than what they've been in terms of puck possession and setting up plays and controlling the puck, I think it's a trickle-down effect, and I think that's why you're seeing the Wild's power play sputter here a little bit. PK is, Dallas is a good hockey team. Yes, they had a couple power play goals in Game 1 in the first minute in like 10 seconds, both goals included. But then the Wild did kill three really important power plays of Dallas in Game 1. But it's all about being on your toes. It's all about, just a locomotion on both power play and the penalty kill, in my opinion, that when that goes away for the Wild is usually when you see them falter in both departments.
Yeah, and I think on the penalty kill, when you're dealing with a team like the Stars, who have a lot of great shooters that are trying to get to the slot, playing that kind of tighter, close in that zone, I feel like is more beneficial. That obviously in the first game, those quick 2-1s, just kind of unlucky bounces, but like I felt like for the majority of the time, our PK has done a decent job of kind of shutting that slot down. It's just feels like just bad bounces every time,
Yeah. And let's face it, guys, there's an old adage in hockey that your best penalty killer is your goaltender. We didn't have that, and Minnesota did not have that last night. Gus the Bus, let in a couple power play goals that weren't really his deal. Maybe one of them a little bit on Monday night, but your best penalty killer is your goaltender, and you need a couple of robbery saves, and I didn't see them last night from Marc Andre, and hopefully that's the case where, Gustafsson can rise a little taller in that department as your last line of defense and goaltending on the penalty kill.
Yeah. It's going to be fun to see them come back to Minnesota. I think you're right on the penalty kill, Alex. I do think that shutting down the slot probably does make sense, but it does lead to, because it leads to a lot of shots that have a lot of traffic, and the way that Fleury plays his game, traffic is not good for him. He needs a lane, and then he can bounce rebounds all over. He flails all over the place. That's just the way he plays. And Gustafsson, I think traffic isn't as bad because he's more locked down. So I'm sure they probably stick with the same type of penalty kill, same power play. Just like you said, I think anybody watching the game, pay attention to what Eric said of just gaining the zone is so important on that power play, and I think the Wild have been doing a really good job of that, and then now they just have to keep working on controlling that puck in the zone and keeping it in there and finding ways to take shots, because there's some power plays we've had where we've had one, maybe two shots, and yet they only got it out of the zone once. We just kind of kept passing around for a minute, and hopefully they start firing some pucks on net. But it's going to be fun to see them come back to Minnesota. Let's kind of look at we kind of talked about everything, I feel like, out of this game, unless there's anything else you want to talk about. Otherwise, let's kind of think about what we're going to see in St. Paul and how big of an impact is home ice going to have for us.
Well, just to follow up on the penalty kill real quick, and then we can turn that corner. From me, listening to you talk, and I think you described it well, good containment outside. If you saw last night, and you saw it in Game 1, Dallas loves to run a version of that puck possession game from the perimeter. They do what they call a hinge pass from either the corner or the point to a player in the middle of the ice, but that is not a final destination shooting spot. That's a redirect to somebody else on a weak side or a strong side to get that flow going. The Wild defended that much better on Monday night than they did on Wednesday night, and that's where they need to get back to on that penalty kill as far as I'm concerned, because the perimeter is fine if you can hold them, but if good teams like Dallas will adjust to that and bring it inside and then swing it outside, hinging it, like I said. And if you don't catch up with that, you're not going to catch up to killing too many penalties, I think, down the stretch here in this series.
Yeah, and a lot of those passes that they were having to, maybe not necessarily that guy, but the guy they would put behind the net, almost on the side of the net, on the edge of the pentagon, Spurgeon, man, just he always blocks that pass. He knocks it down. He keeps laying on the it's
strong game for 46.
Season, but he does it so well in the playoffs. I feel like, I don't know, they don't know how to get around him. It's
another strong game for 46 last night, but keep an eye on like Robertson and Hintz on that hinge thing here in Game 3 and Game 4, and if they can contain that, you know that the Wild PK is tracking in a positive direction again for sure.
Yeah, how important is it to you, Alex, that once we get back here in St. Paul at the X, that do the Wild need to bury first? Is that going to be important, or is just the home field advantage itself going to give us the up?
I think the home field advantage in itself is just such a momentum booster in its own. Obviously, you'd love to get the first goal, but I don't think it's a must-have. I think with being in our home barn, that allows you to generate momentum way easier. So I feel like it's not an absolute must-have, but I think it sure would be nice.
If you can, and I think they will, again, a good home record by Minnesota, by the way, especially in the last couple months. But if you can filter the pressure, sometimes there's pressure when you do come home and you've already won on the road and the series is tied and you're trying to hold court. I think the Wild are past this. I think there have been clubs in the past. If you remember, the Blues came in here pretty hot and heavy in last year's opening round. I think this team and its chemistry and its systems put itself in much better shape to handle the pressure of being and having the home ice advantage. I don't know the way this team is wired if scoring first is absolutely imperative, but let's face it, it never hurts, and you get 19,000 plus on their feet screaming and yelling on a first goal in a first period, in the first couple minutes, and you should be able to ride that wave for sure.
Yeah. I feel like if you're not getting that goal in those first couple minutes, I think you got to be laying a big hit or getting a fight going. You got to do something to just really get those fans rolling and let the players just feed off that energy.
And it won't take much.
No,
I think all it's going to take is one of these guys to finish a check on Suter, and this game is this game is ready to rock. Someone's going to.
I think this fan base is. I think this fan base is really, really, really ready to rock. Especially when they asked them to stay up so late earlier this week, and then you get the villains in the Dallas green coming in here. So that should not be a problem. It's managing those emotions, right? And managing those expectations and delivering in key moments. And again, there's going to be a cavalcade, hopefully, of veteran players back in the lineup, on home ice, sold-out crowd. I mean, 7th Street is going to be bananas all weekend, and we really want to encourage people not only to make it a game day, but make it an off day. I think it should be Super Saturday in between games because it's the Stanley Cup.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's going to be
Go
fun
pack
down
those
in St.
streets.
Paul for sure. I mean, even just if you didn't get a ticket to the game, standing room tickets to the game through the Wild, not even resale, we're still $125. So tickets are not cheap. But if you didn't get a ticket, hey, there's no fee to go hang out at the bars downtown while everyone's coming out screaming after we win, and people are going to be wild down there. It's always a good time. I tend to go down to St. Paul during the playoffs even more than I get to the games. So definitely make your way down there. It's going to be a heck of a game. I think. It sounds like from everything we're talking about, obviously Gus is going to be starting in net. That's no question. Probably the next 2 games after what happened last night. And I think injuries, it sounds like it's probably the biggest, most important thing for the Wild. How healthy can we be? How close to ready can everyone be? Because I think if we have this full team, we are a better team than the Stars. But with Ek and Hartman and Kaprizov and you name it, Klingberg, right? Yeah, every one of these guys out. I think that's our biggest obstacle right now, even more than trying to get around Ottinger. I mean, it's just having those guys healthy. So we'll keep an eye on that. Keeping an eye on the power play, the penalty kill. It's going to be a fun game. I don't think anybody's going to be looking away, especially in a 1-1 tie right now. So it's not a game you can throw away. You're gonna have to take. I think you got to win both these games before you head back to Dallas if you're the Wild. That's my thought.
I wouldn't disagree with you. And I'd also encourage Wild fans to remember Gus the Bus is human. And, there might be an early goal or even 2. But, I mean, there was an early goal or even 2 quite literally on Monday night, and that was the last 2. A lot of pressure right now for me on Gustafsson, the goaltender, because – they know what the backside looks like currently in Marc Andre, and we got so used to Gus the Bus just standing tall and standing firm and standing proud. It'll be interesting to see. He's 24 years old. It's going to be interesting to see how he handles that. So far, he's had every ice water vein checked this side of the Rocky Mountains. So I think the trend is good. I really do think the trend is good, and I do think you'll see a sweep this weekend in St. Paul.
Let's sure hope so. That's, I think every single one of us, everybody watching this, unless you're a Dallas fan and you watch this far, well, hey, congrats to you for listening to the Wild podcast for that long. But we are all hoping that we go and win 2 games. And if we don't, or we do, we're going to be there after the game, talk about it with you just like this. Make sure you subscribe to our podcast on YouTube. You can hit that notification button. That way you know as soon as it gets posted, because it's not necessarily the same time every day. It depends how late these games go, and it can be late. So make sure you subscribe, like, comment on our channel, comment on our past videos. We'll try to make sure we answer them in the video just like you saw in this one, and follow us on Twitter, Hot Dish Sports, and go Wild.